And actually, I did not plan on doing this. I was planning on looking at Hannah this morning out of 1 Samuel. And then when I was sitting down studying yesterday morning, God just laid this on my heart. And so I'm sure that there's somebody here today that's going to get exactly what they needed, because God laid this word on my heart when I didn't intend on going in this direction. We started a new series last week, Breaking Point. How when we come to that breaking point where we lose control ourselves to where it's beyond us. The stress is so overwhelming that we can't handle it anymore. We can't control it anymore. We can't deal with it anymore. And either it's all going to be turned over to God, or I just can't go on. It's your breaking point moments in life. They're different for everybody, but everybody has a breaking point. Might take some longer to get there, but everybody has one. And they can come in all shapes and sizes. It could be physical, your health, it could be spiritual, it could be an addiction, it could be financial, emotional, it could be relationships. These breaking points can come at any of these areas of your life. Matter of fact, they can come in all the areas at the same time. And you can really be at a crushing point. Forget the breaking point. But when you're at your breaking point, you're under great duress. The pain is all through you. You feel it all the way down inside of your bones, and the heartache. Maybe there was some rejection there. Maybe there's been some destruction there. Maybe there's some trauma there. But you're in despair, and despair overtakes you to the point to where you just feel absolutely desperate, absolutely drained. God, I just don't know if I can go another day, another step, because life is so hard, life is so tough, and we all know life is not fair. A true breaking point in your life is going to be a turning point. It's going to be a turning point to where, in some cases, your life will change forever if you experience a loss. The trauma of losing a mate or a friend or a child or a mother, a father. But it can be a turning point in other areas of your life but every turning point's a changing point, and it's an opportunity for God to step in and to show Himself to you to be the great and amazing God that can heal, that can deliver, that can bring you through the painful heartache and the tragedies that you are experiencing down deep inside of your soul. Now, there's two ways that you can go when you're at your breaking point. The first route you can take is you can be broken. The pain is there, you're drained, you're desperate, and instead of taking that to God in your grief and going to God with your pain and your trauma, you internalize it. And the brokenness becomes bitterness in your life. And then you become even more miserable than you were at your breaking point. That's what we're going to learn this morning in our story, is we're going to learn about a woman that had a lot of tragedy and trauma and loss in her life. But instead of taking it to God, she internalized it and became a very bitter woman. The whole time, God was there. And God wanted to deliver her and show her that life was not over for her and that there was hope for her even though she could not see that hope for many, many years. You can be broken this morning. Instead of being bitter, you can get better. And by getting better, you enter the territory of being blessed by God. You know, the only letter from being bitter to being better is the letter I. It's you. It's I-E. You just switch them out. It's really going to depend upon you. Because when you have that trauma and that breaking point in your life, if you don't take it to God and get that supernatural grace that you need, if you don't grieve through whatever it is that has got you in trauma, and as you grieve, that is God's way of healing you. Sometimes the loss is so great that it takes years for you to receive it, but you're making progress because you're taking it to God, and as you grieve, He extends His grace. But if you don't take it to God, you will become bitter, and you will not become better, and you will not be blessed. You will cling to the bitterness instead of clinging to the Lord. Now, this is what bitterness is. Bitterness comes when you hold on to the hurt and you hold on to the pain. You hold on to the injustice that was done to you. You hold on to the negative experience that you just went through. So instead of taking that injustice and that negative thing that has taken place in your life to God, you hold on to it. And if you hold on to it and you don't release it, you're going to become a bitter person. Now, as you become a bitter person, you're going to start saying these things. You're going to say, I didn't deserve this. You're going to become a victim. And some people, believe it or not, for whatever reason at that point in our lives, it makes us feel good to be the victim. For whatever reason, I can't put my finger on it. But we hang on to the injustice of it not being fair, and we think in our minds, I will never be the same. This is so unfair. I can't believe she did this. I can't believe he did this. I will never trust again. I will never see joy and happiness again. And you hold on to that hurt. But you know what happens when you hold on to that hurt? The Bible said there's a little seed that's planted inside of your heart. And that seed turns into a root. The root of bitterness begins to grow on the inside of your heart. And you know what happens? It becomes a crippling force in your life. It not only cripples you, it consumes you, and it controls you. Now, that's a miserable way to live. But yet it's so easy to fall into that trap of going through something, especially where other people have taken advantage of you, and instead of releasing it, hanging on to it. This morning in the book of Ruth, let's read a few of these verses. Verse number 11. I'm going to back up and I'm going to give you a little bit of the story to be able to set the stage. This is Naomi talking to her two daughter-in-laws. She says, "Return, my daughters. Why should you go with me? Have I yet sons in my womb that they may be your husbands? Return, my daughters. Go, for I too am old and do not have a husband. If I said, I have hope. If I should even have a husband tonight and also bear sons, would you therefore wait until they were grown? Would you refrain from marrying? No, my daughters, for it is harder for me than for you. For the hand of the Lord has gone out against me." Don't miss that. Harder for me than it is for you. That's another sign of bitterness. My life is harder than your life. Verse number 16, as she's coming back to Bethlehem, this is actually Ruth's commitment, says, do not urge me to leave you or to turn back from following you. For where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people. Your God, my God. Where you die, I will die. And there I will be buried. Thus may the Lord do to me and worse, if anything but death parts you and me. When she saw she was determined to go with her, she said no more to her. So they both went until they came to Bethlehem. And when they had come to Bethlehem, all of the city was stirred because of them. And the women said, is this Naomi? She said to them, do not call me Naomi, call me Mara, for the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me. I went out full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why do you call me Naomi, since the Lord has witnessed against me and the Almighty has afflicted me? Now let's go back up and go back to verse number 1 and get a little bit of introduction leading up to this, and then we're going to tell you the story. It's still going to be a minute before I get to number 1. But if you want to write these down, these are not in your notes. When we actually get down to number 1, we're going to breeze right through this. You can believe that. First of all, let's look at the times. It says there in verse number 1 that this happened during the days of the judges. What does that mean? During the days of the judges, every man did that which was right in their own eyes. So that's the day in which this story is taking place. Because of that rebellion, the nation of Israel was experiencing a famine in the land. Now, they were having a famine in the land, and that was the trial that they were facing. Now, understand this. First of all, Bethlehem means house of bread and praise. So at the house of bread and praise, they were having a famine in the land because of the rebellion of the nation of Israel. Elimelech, which was the husband, the father, decided that he was going to uproot his family from Bethlehem because of the trial, famine in the land, and he was going to take them to Moab. Now, God referred to Moab as a garbage can, as his wash pot. So it was totally out of the will of God for Elimelech to take his family to Moab and to leave Bethlehem, Judah, because he knew that the pagan gods and the idolatry would pull their hearts and their devotion away from God. So it wasn't God's will. Now, while they were there in the land, there's some tragedies that took place. First of all, the father died, the husband died. And then, several years later, the two sons died. Now that's 3 big losses, a husband, and now she loses 2 children, and this is over a 10-year period. And over this 10-year period now that these 3 losses have taken place, she hears that there's bread again now in Bethlehem, Judah. So she says, okay, it's time for me to return home. She's going to make the trip back because she needs to go home. That's where the bread is. So what happens now is there's 3 testimonies of 3 different women that kind of set the stage as they make their way back to Bethlehem. The 2 women, other than Naomi, are Ruth and Orpah. They are the 2 daughter-in-laws. Naomi's going back, and she's urging both of them to stay in Moab. Don't follow me. Don't go with me. I'm a bitter woman. I'm a miserable woman. There's no hope for you in following me. Stay here. Stay in Moab. 3 testimonies we have. First of all, Orpah does that. She turns back. She goes back to Moab. She walks away from her mother-in-law and back into her land with her people. But Ruth wouldn't do that. Ruth would not go back. Ruth had a loyalty to Naomi. Ruth, more than having a loyalty to Naomi, had heard about the God of Israel, and she had a loyalty to God. And she makes a commitment. Now you got to realize this is a daughter-in-law making this commitment to her mother-in-law. We hear this a lot in the marriage vows. A lot of people use these couple of verses right here. That is the loyalty and the commitment that Ruth had for Naomi. Now Ruth becomes someone that God is going to use in a great way. And God is going to use her loyalty, her faith, and her trust, and her unwavering commitment to do whatever it was going to take to be able to show Naomi that when you put your eyes on God, He can bring things over the horizon that you could not see before that. And Naomi is going to see hope again, and she's going to see life again. And a big reason why is because of this young woman, Ruth the Moabitess, the foreigner, makes a commitment that I'm going back with you and nothing is going to stop me. And this nobody from Moab is going to become a somebody in Bethlehem, Judah. And God is going to bless her life, and God is going to use her life to bring hope to Naomi, but He's also going to use her life to bring hope to the world, because she's going to become a part of the lineage of Christ. Now, when you look at the lineage of Christ, you can't help but see the amazing grace of God. How He took people from all different backgrounds, all different nationalities to make up His lineage. And Ruth is going to marry Boaz. They're going to have a son. His name is Obed. Obed is going to have a son, Jesse, and then Jesse's going to have a son, David, and that's going to carry the lineage of Christ on. So that's how Ruth gets in there. She's going to bring hope to the world. But notice Naomi as they are making their way back home. This bitterness has overtaken her life. And you know, when bitterness overtakes your life, you know, the first thing it gets your attitude. You know, it doesn't take long to be around somebody to figure out that they're bitter about something. You don't know what it is they're bitter about, but you can tell something's not right in their life because you can see it in their attitude and in their mindset. But notice something else that bitterness does. Bitterness closes the door to your future. It shuts the door to the future. So you never are able to stay in the same place. So what happens is you start to go backwards. And that's exactly what was happening with Naomi. Her attitude, her words, her appearance, everything spoke out loud that this woman was bitter and she was blaming God for all of her troubles. Let's look at these 4 points. First of all, I want you to see a beautiful woman. Point number 1, a beautiful woman. You have to look at the meaning of the names to get it. But Naomi means beautiful. It means lovely, pleasant, sweet, kind. So the meaning of the name Naomi described this beautiful woman that she was when they left Bethlehem, Judah 10 years ago. She says there in verse number 21, when I left Bethlehem, Judah 10 years ago, I left full. My life was full of life, full of joy, full of happiness. My life was full. I had a husband who loved me and was taking care of me. I had children that I was nurturing That was a part of my life. And when I left here 10 years ago, I was sweet and beautiful and lovely, and my life was full. We were blessed. We were blessed beyond measure. Things were good. Things were working out, falling into place. My dreams were coming true. Full. But over these last 10 years, I'm not full anymore. I'm empty. I'm not Naomi anymore. I'm not sweet, lovely, beautiful, pleasant, kind. I'm not that woman anymore. I've had these losses and this trauma in my life, so don't call me by that name Naomi anymore. You call me Mara, for the hand of the Lord has went out against me. He has dealt very bitterly with me. And I'm not this beautiful woman anymore. So we go from point 1 to point 2. She went from a beautiful woman to a broken woman. Has there ever been a time in your life to where everything was on track? Things were falling into place. The dreams were starting to work out. Your life was connecting together and you felt full. And then out of nowhere, a breaking point moment comes to where your beautiful life and who you are at that present moment has been broken. It's going to happen to everybody. We're going to have those breaking moments to where we're going to be broken. But this breaking point could be so many different things. But for Naomi, it was the tragedies that happened in Moab. 3 difficult tragedies. So it wasn't like she got laid off, she got this, 3 things that would be easier to deal with. She had 3 tragedies in her life, and she was facing those bitter waters of life. And when she faced those bitter waters of life, the tragedy and the hardship and the pain, she faced a crucial moment in her life, a critical moment in her life. And you face it too. When you're going through life and you're sailing through life, and then all of a sudden, your life comes to a breaking point. God is going to bring you to the crossroads. And the crossroads is going to force you to make a decision at that moment of brokenness. What are you going to do with this brokenness? What are you going to do with this desperation in your life? Will you hold on to it? Will you be mad at God, angry at God? God, your fault. This is unfair. Will you be mad and angry at other people for the injustice that has taken place in your life? Or will you take that and take it to heaven and take it to Jesus? You see, during this trauma, there's decisions that set you on a particular path. And brokenness, when you take it to God, will get better when you take it to God. I'm not saying it's going to make the hurt go away, the difficulty go away. Some of those things may never go away. But when you take it to God, the brokenness and experiencing what only God can give you from heaven, you do get better. May never take the tragic heartache away, but you get better, and you not only get better, you have blessings along the way. That life is not over. Life may not be what it once was, but life in a different realm can even be greater and more blessed when God steps in and radically shift things in your life to take you places you could have never seen when the tragedies and the breaking point moments started happening in your life. You see, what happens is there can be two people going through the exact same breaking point, the exact same trauma. One grieves and she takes it, or he takes it to God, and the other one holds it in. And they don't grieve. They hold it in. And when you hold it in, just over a little bit of time, you start getting angry and mad. And it turns, that seed turns into a root. And that's why a year down the road, someone who's been grieving and receiving healing can be leaps and bounds ahead of the other person that went through the same exact trauma that did not grieve and look to God. I was watching Dr. Phil the other day, and this is even true, not even in the spiritual realm, just in the psychological realm. He was interviewing this woman that had lost her child, and she had lost her child at the hands of her live-in boyfriend, and it had been ever so long, and she had been so wrapped up in the case and so wrapped up in everything that she hadn't experienced any healing at all because she had not grieved. And Dr. Phil told her, which kind of struck me, he says, you've got to have time every day. He says, if it's getting up 30 minutes early, or if it's when you get home, you take 30 minutes and you get alone and you cry and you grieve the loss of this child. Because he said, if you don't grieve the loss of this child, you will never get better. Because we hang on to it. And what we hang on to, instead of getting better, we become bitter. And instead of being blessed by God, we create more misery and more heartache. Y'all remember that verse? Very familiar verse. The thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. What he does at the breaking point moment is he enters your life in the midst of trauma to where your life is full. But at this moment, you're vulnerable because you just experienced some great loss. If it's the loss, even if it's the loss of your health, or the loss of a job, or the loss of a mate through a marriage breakup, divorce, he enters in, and what he does is he tries to get an advantage in that vulnerable moment to steal more away from you than what you actually feel like you lost at that breaking point. He wants to take more from you. And if you allow him the opportunity, guess what? He will. He'll steal things from you that money can't buy, that drugs can't drown out, that alcohol can't soothe. He'll steal those things that only God can give you that will make you the most miserable person on the face of the earth, because the beautiful life turns into the broken life, and then third of all, it turns into the bitter life, a bitter, bitter woman. I am bitter. You know, the great thing about Naomi is she actually admits she's bitter. Most people will not admit they're bitter. You can try to tell some people that you may be close to that I think you've got a little root of bitterness there, and they will deny it. Few people will say, I'm bitter. We just don't like to admit that one. But Naomi here, she admits it. She comes out, she verbalizes it, she says it. She says, I'm bitter, and I want all of you to know that the reason why all these wrinkles are here and all these gray hairs are here is because over the last 10 years, the hand of God has been against me. It's been hard and difficult, and it's heaven's fault that I'm not this beautiful, sweet, pleasant, lovely woman anymore. I mean, she had stuff that beauty control couldn't fix. Let me give you the truth right here. Truth that I can say now that I would never say at the beginning of somebody's traumatic experience. Because at the beginning of a traumatic breaking point moment, you don't need anybody to preach to you. You just need somebody that will love you and be there for you. But let me share a truth with you. A life-changing truth that is true most often. You cannot change what has happened. Whatever that might be, you can't change it. But you can change how you are reacting to it. You're either reacting to it and getting better, or you're reacting to it and becoming more bitter. No matter how bad you want to change it, you can't. Most often, there are things that happen that we can't go back and change and make them better. The only thing we can do at that particular moment is just to make sure that our choice is a godly choice and that we look and focus in the right direction, because bitterness was her choice. Coldness, hardness. I mean, when you got somebody that thinks God is against them, that's a hard battle. That's a hard battle to fight. It's hard to convince somebody that God's not against them. When you tell somebody God is sovereign and God is in complete control, they then want to know, well, if God is sovereign and He's in complete control and He wasn't against me, why didn't He stop it? So you can't defend that, because there's no answer that you could adequately give them that would make them feel better at that moment, because you're not God and I'm not God. We don't know why He doesn't stop some things if He can. We know this: there's sin and evil in our life, and because of that, there's death. And where there's sin and evil and death, there are bad things that happen, there are accidents that happen, tragedies that happen, all because we're all going to die physically, and we're all going to die somehow, some way. We're all going to experience collapses in our life because people are sinful and Adamic, and they're going to do injustices against us. They're going to hurt us. They're going to take advantage of us. That's just going to be a part of the life that we live in. But what bitterness does is it blinds you. She was carrying this burden that it was all God's fault, and she was harboring this bitterness inside of her heart. Now, let me share with you these 4 things that bitterness does. Point A, bitterness believes the lie. Bitterness believes the lie. And the lie is, I'm the victim and I did not deserve this. You may have not deserved it, but God never wants us to play the victim. Because what if everybody played the victim? My life is over. That's a lie. Your life's not over. My marriage is over. Only if you both choose for it to be. My joy is forever gone. Well, if you believe Satan's lie, yes, it is. But if you believe the truth, no, it's not. You see, if you're a victim, you'll never get better, because you'll never be able to be set free. The chains will be there. You'll be a victim forever. Somebody will be ruling over you that is bringing misery and heartache into your life. God wants you to be His child. He wants to fill you with His truth and help you to be able to see that you can rebound, you can come back, and you can be stronger than you ever were before. You were horrible with your money. Now you're going to be better with it. You were horrible taking care of your health. Now you're going to be better with it. He can take it and propel us forward to experience things in our life that we've never experienced. So bitterness believes the lie. Second of all, bitterness blames others. If it's not God's fault, then it's your fault. And you know what your fault means. Your fault means hostility. That means that there's going to be a lot of negativity around the person that is bitter, because even if they're not verbally assaulting negatively each and every day, the focus on the inside subtly is what has been done to them. And they blame you. They blame your family. They blame God. They blame the coworker. They blame the boss. They blame the owner. Same thing that happened in the Garden of Eden. Adam blamed Eve. Eve blamed the snake. The snake didn't have a leg to stand on. Everybody blames. It just goes right down the line. We blame. Somebody else's fault. And you know what is at the root of that? Selfishness and pride. Because even though you may have not have deserved it, and even though it was unfair, selfishness and pride is at the root of it, because you want to hang on to it. You don't want to forgive. You don't want to let it go. For whatever reason, you don't want to let it go. And you nurture it like a little pet. And it doesn't take long for that pet to do some great damage to your heart and to your life. Third of all, C, bitterness beats you down. Because what bitterness does is it poisons you on the inside, and it just keeps beating on you each and every day. It controls your life. It closes every door in your life. It locks you up inside of this prison. And it's just total, absolute defeat. Fourth of all, bitterness, most of all, blocks your blessings. Bitterness blocks your blessings. You may give up on God. You may give up on relationships. You may give up on a number of different things in your life. But let me tell you this. God never gives up on you. Did you notice? You go back and you read chapter number 1. Naomi has talked about everything negative in her life. And she never mentions the one good thing in her life other than being alive at that moment. And it was her daughter-in-law, Ruth. God had Ruth there all the time. But Naomi could not see that God had Ruth there because she was blinded. Her focus was not right. She could not see that God had brought this woman into her life, and God was going to use this woman to breathe hope back into her again. She couldn't see it. You see, you might have something sitting in your life right now. It could be a person, it could be a thing, it could be an opportunity, but you have that God has put there, that God wants to do in your life, because God hasn't given up on you, and you have been so focused on the injustice to you, and the negativity and the bitterness has overtaken you to where you do not see what God has placed in your life. that could be the thing that delivers you from the hopelessness that you are wrapped up in today at this very moment. She was a beautiful woman, a broken woman, a bitter woman. Fourth of all, she was a blessed woman. You read the rest of the story. Ruth's one of my favorite books in all of the Bible. You read the rest of the story and you will see that in the years to come, Naomi would experience some of the greatest fulfillments in her life. Yeah, there was a lot of tragedy there and a lot of heartache there, but God didn't give up on her. And God brought this beautiful Ruth into her life. And I'm here to tell you that God has the power to bring good things, great things, glorious things into your life that you cannot see at this particular moment, because all you can see are the bitter waters, the bitter circumstances that are surrounding your life. But I'm here to tell you, God has the power. If you could see over the hilltop, you would see a land that was full of blessings, that God wants to get you from where you're at to where those blessings are, where your miracles are, where your breakthroughs are. You know what you got to do right here? You got to let it go. You got to let it go. If the bitterness is there, it's a root. You got to ask God to dig into your heart and dig that root out. Let me tell you this about bitterness. Bitterness is just like forgiveness. Sometimes it's a process. You do it and you mean it and it's straight from the heart, but you're still going to have to fight off the enemy in your mind, because he's going to still be sitting there telling you that you need to take that back. You need to take that back. You shouldn't have gave them that forgiveness. They didn't deserve that. Who do they think they are? That ain't going to go away overnight. Bitterness is a root. It's a root that's got to be dug out, and God can dig that thing out of there today. But you're going to have to lean on God and trust in God for the healing to come and take over where the bitterness has been sitting. The great thing about it is you don't realize the miracles that God can work in your life if you'll just let Him get this out so that He can get Himself in. Because it's just like the children of Israel when they were circling around out there in that desert. They were thirsty. They were desperate for something to drink. They were at their breaking point. And when they saw that water, they started running to it. They dipped down in there and started drinking it and spit it out of their mouths, because it was the bitter waters of Marah. And you know what God did? God told Moses to what? Take a branch, throw that branch into there, and He took those bitter waters and turned them into what? Sweet waters. He can do the same in your life. Even greater than that. But you got to give them the opportunity to do it. You got to give it to them. And that's what God wants you to do today. Yeah, you could be broken. Just keep looking to God. Keep grieving through whatever it is and let God give you what you need each and every day. But if that bitterness is there, you need to come get it out. Admit it, be truthful to God, and let Him root it out. Let's stand by our heads. If our prayer warriors could Go ahead and make your way down front. God, today we just ask that you do great work here. I would say it's just as we struggle to forgive. If we struggle to forgive, then I know that we struggle with bitterness. And there's probably a lot of people here this morning that has a lot of this in their life, a touch of this in their life, and God, you don't want it to be there. They may not even want it to be there. And I pray, God, today that you would help us. Help us, God, to look to you. Help us to trust you. Help us to turn it all over to you so that you can bring healing into those injustices that we have held on to and those negative things that we have fed our minds over and over and over. God, give us the strength and the faith to do that. Restore relationships, restore marriages, give people breakthroughs, God. I pray that your blessings would flow here today, that you would bring healing here today, that you would bring a unification like we've never seen before as we allow you to bring down these walls so that we can have total, absolute freedom and access to all that you want to do in our lives. We ask it in Christ's name. Heads bowed, eyes closed.